this segment, we're going to give you a brief overview of what to expect from our upcoming CCNA Security series from here at IT Pro TV. Now, Ronnie, I know that you're running point on this, and we're looking forward to seeing you there. Can you give us a general idea of what we can expect from the series?
When we start taking a look at the CCNA Security series, we of course are going to take a look at every single exam objectives for that brand new exam for the 210-260 exam, which of course is going to be for their CCNA Security. You do need to remember that you have to have some prerequisite skills there. It is going to actually require you to at least have your CCENT before you go ahead and take your CCNA Security. Now you can take it, but it's going to require you to go back and also take the other one as well. My recommendation is that not only do you actually take that and make sure you pass it, but also review the CCNA routing and switching episodes before you also take, of course, your CCNA Security. It's not necessarily so that you have to, but I think that provides a firm foundation for everything that you're actually going to end up facing for that exam and provides better background for you. But in our series, we are going to focus in, of course, then on some of the different technologies involved inside of the Cisco security infrastructure, making sure, of course, that we cover everything that we need to. The big difference on what we're actually going to be doing is that the majority of everything that we're doing here is not going to be based inside of the graphical user interface. It's going to be based through the command line. So let's take a look at some of the different things that we'll be covering when we start to take a look here. So on our the official exam objectives that you can download from Cisco here, you know that we're going to end up covering, of course, basic security concepts that are actually going to be Cisco-centric here. So when we start taking a look, we'll take a look at common security principles, of course, making sure we have a solid foundation there. We take a look, of course, at different types of threats that we'll end up facing, and we'll describe those. We'll go over the very fundamentals, of course, of cryptography, describing the idea of key exchange, understanding that, and how hashing algorithms work, and of course even digital signatures and even the PKI infrastructure a little bit, and then basic network topologies. Okay, we'll see all those inside of our episode, giving us the firm foundation that we need as we start setting up security. Then, of course, we'll talk about secured access management as well, and we'll spend a bit of time in that series here taking a look at how do we ensure that we do secure the access to things like routers and switches, and of course even the ASAs. We'll talk about authentication methods using what we call AAA security here, authentication, authorization, and accounting, as well as 802.1x, and then we'll bring in a little bit of the topic that everybody's buzzword here, BYOD, bring your own device, and how that figures into our systems. We'll spend a good deal of time here implementing VPNs, whether they're actually remote access VPNs or of course even site-to-site VPNs. Then we will also go into configuring switching and routing and its operations as well. We'll take a look at implementing routing protocols with some authentication as well as securing access there. We'll secure the entire control plane, as well as talk about configuring how we configure our switches to prevent things like layer 2 attacks as well. And then, of course, even basic VLAN security and setting what we call private VLANs. We'll spend a good deal of our time also, of course, working with the ASA. Now here you need to make sure, and I emphasize this, and I will emphasize this during our show, is that we want to make sure that we are on at least version 9 of a Cisco ASA. It doesn't matter after that, but if you're still running like 8.3 or 8.4, you need to get on a Cisco ASA that actually has at least version 9, and we'll go through some of the different states that we talk about here. We'll configure NAT in depth and multiple times here as well, and then talk about implementing a zone-based firewall, and then you actually see all the different security features. We briefly go over the idea here of intrusion prevention systems. These are the most expensive components and usually not components that are heavily tested on, but we do describe all these different ways that we tend to implement them, making sure that we understand the basic concepts, of course, of intrusion prevention systems, and then the technologies that are involved, and of course even talking about the basic concepts here of endpoint and content security. Remembering that files, of course, and all of our data needs to be secured not only while the data is at rest, but also while it's in transit, and then realizing what needs to be on those machines or what appliances that we can implement that, of course, Cisco-centric that will help us out. So that will actually pretty much bring us to a close on everything, but we'll definitely cover every single topic in there, and we'll cover them in depth, and each one, just about, not every single one, will have, well, very much hands-on demonstrations on how to configure it through the command line, and that's a lot of typing. That's all I know that we'll actually be facing in the future, but it's something that we really have to get used to, and it's something that they're expecting you to get used to for that exam.
Well, that sounds like a lot to go through, and I do look forward to joining you in that endeavor. Ronnie, is there anything else that we need to know maybe specifically about the exam itself? You've done a great job of explaining what we can expect from the series. Once we get done watching it, we're ready to go. I'm hot to trot. I know I got the knowledge in my head. I'm ready to take an exam. Can you give me a little bit of background on that?
Sure thing. When we start taking a look and you're getting ready for that exam, not only do you need that base knowledge, but you also want to know a little bit about the details of the exam. On my screen, I went ahead and pulled up, of course, the official exam objectives here that you actually find from Cisco. And right here on implementing Cisco network security, it is kind of funny that even though they changed the name of the exam code is still the same as the previous. The number has changed, but that's about it, okay? So on this one, the key here is notice that you'll get 90 minutes for the exam, and it's actually 60 to 70 questions. So you have a very much a scrunched period of time. The idea of being able to get through this means you need to actually be able to do this stuff with speed and accuracy, and that's the only way to be able to do this. This is not a theory type of exam. You'll get questions on theory, but a lot of it is you recognizing, because you actually have that muscle memory built in and you have the ability to scan very quickly to know what is actually in place and what is not in place for you to implement security from the command line. And it is command line centric on this particular exam as well. It doesn't mean you can ignore the GUI interface, the graphical user interface, but we're leaving that to you this time because we spend so much time inside of actually the command line that there really isn't time for us to actually do both and to do it in that sense. But you can actually take the ability now to go into that graphical user interface and configure that as well. The only last piece of information also that I have, of course, has to deal with the idea of pricing. Now, this depends on where you are in the world. For us here in the US, okay, it's the exam that begins with 210, okay, or 210. It's associate level exam in advanced technology here, and this one is about $250 US as of this particular recording as we begin this series here. So it's not a cheap exam, it's not the most expensive exam that's out there, but it is enough to kind of make you think twice before you think, I'm just going to try it and see, if I fail it, no big deal. Well, $250 can be kind of a big deal at that point. So make sure you're ready, and the only way to do it is by preparation like crazy. So if you are actually ready for that, well, there you go. There's the details behind it, and if you think about it and you're ready for that, make sure you join us for the shows that are coming up too.
Awesome, Ronnie. Well, thank you so much for that information. We're really looking forward to the series. I hope you are as well. And if it does seem like something that's interesting to you, well, we look forward to seeing you in those upcoming episodes.